Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, I thought maybe we'd switch it up a little bit this week and just do some hardcore brewing, like Dominaria standard attack phase brewing.
All right.
So I have a couple of lists, like at least 2 lists I want to talk about, and then maybe get to a third.
Wait, are we brewing or are we tuning your deck?
No, my friend. We are brewing. We're going to start with something. You will see. This will become evident to you very quickly. All right? You are one of the most brilliant.
You're going to tell me a list or a concept?
Oh, my friend, I'm going to start with a list, and you'll see. You'll see where we go.
All right.
I think this is going to be exciting. All right, so this is let's call it idea number 1. I'm just going to start rattling off some cards for idea number 1, and then let's see where we go. Okay. 4 Torrential Gearhulk. 4 Tempest Djinn. 4 Blink of an Eye. 4 Censor. 1 Commit to Memory. 4 Disallow. 4 Essence Scatter. 4 Hieroglyphic Illumination. 2 Negate. 2 Syncopate. 2 Search for Iskanta. 25 Island.
You're just rating off the deck list from the mono blue deck I was suggesting.
Oh, am I? So I had to read about the deck that is basically this is the deck I've always ever dreamed of playing, and I had.
Well, then I guess it's a good thing you read StarCityGames.com.
My heart was broken at the same time I fell in love.
You never asked.
I didn't even know this was possible. And then I saw it put to paper.
Right.
And I've just had to explain to certain teammates that this is what I will be playing. And they're like, well, what about the decks of the Pro Tour? What if we need to have other blue? No. This is the deck. But actually, I did actually want to iterate on it a little bit. Because I thought I had some ideas. Okay,
so you're not talking about brewing.
I don't.
Okay. So let's talk about what are the ideas you were thinking?
All right. So, I was thinking that this deck there's 2 cards that I thought I might want to play in, potentially for sure 1 in the main deck, and then for sure one possibly in the main deck, and definitely in the 75. So the one in the main deck that I was thinking about was Spell Pierce, probably in place of the negates, like a 2 of on the Spell Pierces.
Why do you want Spell Pierce?
I think that there's a very specific play pattern that I would want it in. One of them is if I were going to play a 4th turn Tempest Djinn with blue open is one possibility. It obviously very much depends on what kind of opponent you're up against. But I think that even better is if you have a 3rd turn Tempest Djinn and then a 4th turn Tempest Djinn. If you have that, like, you're really just in Protect the Queen mode then, right? Like, Tempest Djinn is a ferocious racer, right? Like, this deck is, I think, I mean, I don't know. I haven't even sleeved up a single copy of the cards list, but I think this is going to be something special.
It looks dope. One thing I will say in Spell Pierce's defense is that when you play 4 Censor, I think you get a little extra mileage out of your Spell Pierce. Like, I think that the natural way that people play, like the way that is natural to fight Censor, involves walking into more Spell Pierces than you normally would. And I think that the way you play around Spell Pierce involves walking into the Spell Pierce Censor combo more often than Censor would actually get its money. So I think that, I don't hate that aspect of it. I also think that the deck really benefits from some tempo plays.
Yeah, so I think that whatever you said about Censor is probably at least somewhat additionally reinforced by the presence of Hieroglyphic Illumination, right? Just like another 1-mana play where you might just want to toss a card into the graveyard.
Totally. That seems good.
Yeah, so...
but do you like Syncopate?
No.
I'm kind of medium on Syncopate. I actually kind of think that we might be able to do better.
I think I really like Spell Pierce in this list.
No, play 2 Spell Pierces. That's fine. I'm just saying I think we could also cut Syncopate.
So, I mean, maybe cutting Syncopate instead of cutting Negate is better. I'm not sure. Syncopate is actually really good on the play, though. And especially...
Yeah, but people... Dude, you have 4 Censors in your deck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what happens when you play Tempest Djinn on turn 3? And it's not like Syncopate can protect your Tempest Djinn very well on turn 4 or 5.
So here's the thing.
And Syncopate's so bad with Torrential Gearhulk.
That's true. That is very true. I was actually surprised you didn't play any kind of Glimmer type card.
I actually like one Glimmer Genius. I would cut. So if there were two change the 2 negates to 2 Spell Pierces, and cut 1 Syncopate for 1 Glimmer, and the other Syncopate. This is going to sound crazy, but I'm not even like. No, it's too crazy.
Say it.
No, it doesn't work in this deck. I just love this card. It's not right for this deck. You'll see why. It's not right for this. I love this card. It's not right for this deck. The card is Precognition Field. I think Precognition Field is so underrated.
You're right. I agree. It probably doesn't work in this deck, right?
Right, exactly.
There's so many great control cards that you could play, like Planeswalker type cards or board control type cards, and they just don't work in this deck. This deck is so cool because I think that there's a mode of this deck where it's very Skies-like, where your Tempest Djinn is like a Rishodon airship, except it's like the most cranial plate.
It's the most unbelievably good Rishodon airship of all time.
Yeah, it's like a Rishodon airship with some kind of cranial plating attached to it, right?
Serendib Efreet never had anything on this card. Oh my god.
So I'm trying to explain so first of all, just to step back for a second, the reason I am so attracted to this deck, it's like, obviously,
this is like every deck you've ever played that you've loved.
It's like every deck I've ever played that I've ever done well with. So it's like the Yosei deck. It's like the Kiga Jushi Blue deck. It's like the 5-color mono blue Dragons deck, right? It's got all those things, like tons of permission, great creatures.
It may not surprise you, but I was definitely channeling my inner. I was channeling my inner Michael J. when I made that list. That's definitely, literally, just textbook out of the Floresian school of mono blue.
Oh,
you invented that style.
Yeah, I love this deck so
much.
That
as sort of the modern, the next evolution of the Lauer Big Blue style, but with many more counter spells and just more of an emphasis on streamlined efficiency.
Yeah, so one of the things I was trying to explain to these young kids, they're like, well, what would you do about this? And I'm like, well, you just tap out for a Tempest Djinn. And then they're like, well, what if they attack into it? I'm like, I don't know, I'll probably block. And they're like, but then they'll kill your Tempest Djinn. I'm like, yeah, but I got 2 cards. I'm not going to block if I don't have a good follow-up, right? If I have another Tempest Djinn, I probably ruined them right there, right? And if I don't, maybe I'll take the 3 or whatever, and I'll just start racing them. It doesn't matter how good their beatdown draw is. One blink of an eye is gonna completely undo their Hazoret turn. This deck, I cannot wait to start playing this deck. And you have all kinds of 2-for-1, 3-for-1 action off the Gearhulk. I think you can just play this slow grinding game against other slow decks at the same time. You're just a better racer deck and a better control deck than most of the other decks. I love the 1 commit to memory. You can go find it with the Search for Azcanta. Love it. So there is one card I wanted to add possibly to the main deck, maybe in place of one of those Syncopates. Certainly I'm going to have minimum 1 copy in the 75, but in the main deck, I'm thinking about this. I don't know. Maybe it's overkill. Maybe it's too conservative.
What is it, though?
River's Rebuke.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
I like at least one in the side. I agree.
Yeah. So
I don't know. You're right. I don't know if you'd want it in the main or not. I could imagine it, but I would guess you don't.
The problem I can imagine is, God forbid, what if somebody lands a Lich's Mastery against you? If they land a Lich's Mastery against you, I think any Lich's Mastery deck worth its salt can probably figure out a way to kill your 8 creatures. Or, just hold your creatures off well enough that it's going to be very, very difficult to get them in a situation where they're actually sacrificing the Lich's Mastery before you lose the game. So I think just having the River's Rebuke somewhere in your deck so that you can go find it with the Search for Azcanta is very, very attractive, right? It'll just be somewhere, right? And then you win.
There's a lot of different things. I don't know how much of the field to play Lich's Master yet. Maybe. I think that if enough of the field plays it, it's just a general, purpose good card that has extra meaning because of how much Tempest Djinn appreciates a virtual time lock. It's a good combo with Commit to Memory in Magical Christmas Land. At the very least, I think one in the sideboard. I could actually imagine two in the sideboard, really. Like, I think it's going to be... I think that there's enough potential mid-rangey, like, just, decks with lots of creatures that cost 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
My minimum is one in the sideboard, right? So I was...
Yeah, I think minimum one in the sideboard. Minimum, I agree. Dude, what do you think of Nimble Obstructionist as a one-of in the main deck?
See, in the one-up in the main deck, I hadn't thought about that. Like this deck... It might be great. I don't know. This deck is so Cadillac to me. I think that if I were to just like expand to creatures that weren't so premier as these creatures, I'd be like
creatures.
What?
A Nimble Obstructionist. Uncounterable, 2 and a blue, counter an activated or triggered ability you don't control. Draw a card.
I know this man. He is also a 3/1 flash sometimes.
That's not... Yeah, but you can't think of the fact that you have a modal card that has a backup plan of being a 3/1 flying flash, letting you attack and kill planeswalkers, or they drop Lich's Mastery and actually on the soft turn you drop it and do enough to kill... No. I'm just saying that, this is an uncounterable stifle cantrip. That's the part I'm into.
So
then it is a backup victory condition is,
What effects would you be just in mental space going after with the Nimble Obstructionist?
So to begin with, Evolving Wilds is going to have a new potential reason to exist with the printing of the 5 enemy color, like Sulphur Falls types. As a fixer, Evolving Wilds,
Well,
and then
wait, pause on that idea. First of all, I might already be sold just on the Evolving Wilds. And in fact, I might be sold on as many as 4 copies between deck and sideboard on the Evolving Wilds, and not just for the enemy color dual lands. I have Evolving Wilds in monocolor decks right now, just to get a card in the graveyard. And I know that's probably wrong, but I mean, it's certainly something.
No, it's the thing you can do. But I also think people are going to play these like Memorial to Genius. The cards like these Memorial lands that you can sacrifice to get a bonus. It's great to go ahead because people are going to want their monocolor decks to have ways to get the land into the graveyard.
So, do you think Memorial to Genius is just completely unacceptable in this strategy?
Not at all. No, not at all. I don't think it's completely unacceptable. In fact, what I would do, I think I think I would start by playing with 1. If I were going to play an event immediately, I would play 0, but I would want to start testing with 1 so that you draw it, you get some information, it's not distorted by the diminishing returns that the card has. And if you like the 1, I could see playing more. I could imagine a world where it's crazy to not play 4, even though you have the Tempest Djinns. So I would want to start by getting information, and I think you'll get the most pure look at the information by starting with 1. It's hard to want to bet on it in the short run because you have so many other amazing card draw options,
Yeah, I was just thinking for this deck, assuming all goes well and this is going to play out the way that I've been imagining it playing out for the last 24 or so hours. It's just you're so hyper consistent with the mana base, etc. That maybe I just would never want to foul that with come into play tapped, and I was just
No. I think it's actually the other way. See, I thought where you're going with it is if the mana base is this consistent, that's more of a reason why you want the Memorial to Genius. The whole your mana's too good. Do you remember that whole you were one of the pioneers of this, where sometimes you got to get greedier with your mana base, right?
Sure.
And I think that Memorial to Genius is the type of card that when your mana is so good, you can afford to take a little bit of a hit in certain spots so that you get more power. And Memorial to Genius, another way to think of it, is that playing the Memorial to Genius is cycling Hieroglyphic Illumination, right? But instead of a random card, you're always getting a land, but the later you can pay and get a really bad 6-mana inspiration. However, you're getting the 6-mana inspiration when you actually want it, and when you're actually cycling your hieroglyphic illumination, you're getting a land, which is usually the thing you want when you're cycling hieroglyphic illumination.
Yeah, the other thing about it is that it's such a small thing, but I think it's so meaningful in a deck that currently has 25 islands, is that this takes up a land slot, right? Like,
but my point is that I think that it helps make it more justifiable to play 26 land.
Oh.
Because if you play 2 Memorial to Geniuses, then you're going to flood out less often while simultaneously getting be short on mana less often.
See, I'm not. So I kind of love that, and I kind of don't think that I'd go that direction. And just because the deck already has 25 land as a base and 2 Search for His content, those are non-zero lands, right? Like,
and the 4 hieroglyphic illumination and 4 Glimmer of Genius.
No, I'm just saying glimmers yet.
Not Glimmer of Genius. Sorry, Censor.
Yep.
I'm just saying that I don't know, man. There's only so much air you can play. So I would try playing 1 Memorial to Genius as one of the 25 land and see where it goes. If you like it, maybe try a 2nd Memorial to Genius as a 26th land. But either way, I think that the first Nimble Obstructionist has a lot of value, and I think that they have diminishing returns because of how important it is to have a lot of 2s.
So
you can still play 2 if you want, but I would try at least 1.
I'm going to start by adding a Memorial to Genius over land 25, swapping out the negates for 2 Spell Pierces, and then 1 Syncopate for Nimble Obstructionist. And you think leave the other Syncopate, or do you think...
No, cut the other Syncopate.
Oh,
I thought you wanted... Glimmer Genius, right.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
All in. All right, you want to...
That sounds great. That sounds like an upgrade.
You want to start talking about sideboards, or... Cause...
Sure, whatever you want, man. It's your world, Squirrel.
All right, I'm thinking minimum 1 River's Rebuke, and I don't know what else I'd want. I think probably anti-beatdown stuff, or maybe beatdown transformative stuff. I don't know.
Okay, so to start with, maybe I'm a chump, but I always like starting these decks with at least a couple negates, right? Like, but it's a safe starting point to give you something to compare other stuff to.
So, I consider kind of the negate, spell pierce, Jace's defeat slot, kind of like I'm going to have something in that zone, right?
Well, I like having a starting point of like a couple negates and then 1 Jace's defeat, but that's just to eat up some of the space so that you can like get a framework for evaluating the other stuff you might need. Like for instance, in a deck like this, I think you got to have I think you got to figure out what are the control magics you want, because I think you want a couple control magics of some sort.
I agree,
and I think that Tempest Djinn. And I think that the energy based option's not gonna end up being the right one. I don't mind in Bolas's clutches. I think that the ability to steal a planeswalker within Bolas's clutches is going to be amazing. I actually don't even know for sure that it's a non-starter to play in Bolas's clutches as a one-of in the main deck. But I think in the sideboard's probably a safer starting point.
So I was actually thinking a similar thing about Imbolas's Clutches. So Imbolas's Clutches is 4 UU for a legendary enchantment aura. Enchant permanent, you control enchanted permanent. Enchanted permanent is legendary. So it's a confiscate that has like some weird conditions on it, right? So it itself is legendary, and it makes the thing that it's confiscating legendary. All right, but it costs the same as a confiscate, and it's as flexible as a confiscate, right? I mean, other than it being legendary. So I think this is weird. Like the card that you probably don't want to play too many copies of. It's pretty expensive, and it's also legendary. So
maybe. I mean, I don't think you want to play too many in the main deck, but like I guess you don't want to play too many in the sideboard either. Confiscate, when Confiscate was legal, was definitely the type of card that unless you were playing a Grim Monolith deck, you had to be really careful about playing too many Confiscates anyway. But I think the Confiscate it's a good card to start with, and it's even better with all the Planeswalkers that you would want. People are going to do stuff like Yawgmoth's Vial offering a Nico Bolas into play, and then you can confiscate it, and wow, are you doing it?
You're like, I went straight to Karn's Temporal Sundering, and then I was like, legendary sorcery, no! Can you imagine if that were not a legendary sorcery? It would be so perfect for this deck.
Yeah, but I mean, that's mostly just because the card would be overpowered if it wasn't a legendary.
Grossly overpowered. So,
dude, okay, so in Bolas's Clutches, though, at the very least, can we get 2 of these in the sideboard?
We could start with 2 in the sideboard, sure.
Or is there a different control magic you like more?
Well, what's is the other one? The Melody, the sorcery one, the UUX one.
Like the fact that it's sorcery, I don't think you really get that much mileage out of it. Like you have nothing that is taking advantage of it. You're gonna still walk into all the same negates and everything, and it's just a much less powerful card, right?
Yeah.
Or are you thinking that people are going to have some disenchants for your Gear Hulks anyway, and you don't want to be all in on the one that actually is a target?
I actually think that there's not that much of a bullseye on enchantments. I think that there's a lot of bullseye on artifacts, but I think enchantments are fairly free and clear, personally.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we can go 2 there to start.
And then, in terms of, I think you want to have at least a couple creature threats, though. And so, I wonder. So first of all, one option is more Nimble Obstructionists. I really don't think that that's actually crazy. I think Nimble Obstructionist is super dope, and I think that there's going to be increased appetite for Planeswalkers, and I don't know. But beyond that, what do you think of
how many would you play? Like as many as 3?
I could imagine there being 4 total. I don't know.
See, I play them against Evolving Wilds. Like the Evolving Wilds exchange you were talking about, that seems pretty cool to me. But I think that Nimble Obstructionist, like if I were
how about Renegade Map?
Same, but those things are so much faster than a Nimble Obstructionist in a lot of games. So I think if you're talking about using a Nimble Obstructionist to interact with a Planeswalker, I'd really just rather have a negate. That's where I'd go there. Also, negate's just better against if somebody's going to play is it a Sarcophagus that cycling artifact or something like that?
You got to beat down though.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
If I were to go aggro, not by aggro, just lower curve creatures. I could imagine myself playing a Merfolk Trickster in this deck. I think that kind of card has a lot of value. Especially you can curve out with it. You can kind of steal the initiative on a turn and then play a Tempest Djinn anyway, or if they have a Heart of Kirin or something like that.
Okay. What about the Saga activations, though? Although I don't know. I don't know if any of the Sagas are really priced to move, but it can be dope to Nimble Obstructionist a Saga trigger.
That's true.
What about kicker, man? Obstructionist somebody's kicker?
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize you could do that.
It's a triggered ability. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what trigger. I don't know that there's enough, but I could imagine if the thing is though the big spell that does 10, which by the way I think the card's actually okay, but if that card was uncounterable, then it would be sick to actually if it's only uncounterable on the kicker, then countering the kicker would be funny, but it's not. So you could just counter it a negate would be better.
Are there any just beatdown blowouts, something I always err in the direction of an Authority of the Consuls or something. Is there anything like that in blue?
Well, I mean this is a separate direction. I was thinking when you're talking beatdown blowout, blue deck doing the beatdown.
Oh,
I mean Merfolk Trickster. Merfolk Trickster is just a really hard.
Yeah, I would totally consider playing 4 in the sideboard.
In terms of what kind of stuff you would want against somebody playing a beatdown deck, kind of tough, right? A lot of the normal options that you would want to play, they intentionally don't give to blue, you know?
Yeah, I think the main enemies...
I don't know. You don't want stuff like Filigree, Familiar, or something, right?
So how about this? What about what about Ceremonious Rejection? I think like two or three of the main most dangerous cards that are like everywhere right now, not just in red decks, and then not just in like green decks, is Bomat Courier and Walking Ballista. Like
I could be into. I think Ceremonious Rejection is interesting. It's worth a consideration. I could imagine starting with a couple.
And God Pharaoh's Gift also is.
I also just like. I really like either 2 mana proactive cards or 1 mana reactive cards in a deck like this. Like I think that the tempo, like the value of the tempo, and just the way that you end up being able to use your mana, like how much you end up making these really good turn 3s and turn 4s. What is the best way to be able to actually interact with an aggro deck? Because part of the problem is that they have like a virtual, like blocking is hard, and they have an unlimited amount of lightning strike types if they want them,
So I think that the challenge is, part one is, are they like mono red? Are they black red? Are they Mardu? Which aggro deck are they? Because I think if they're black red, you have a completely different, axis you have to think about, because they have Unlicensed Disintegration, which kills everything, messes you up, and it's 1 card exchange with like no matter how powerful your creature is. And that's very different than if they have they have to run their Earthshaker Kenra into your creature and then also use an Abrade or a Lightning Strike on it, is very different. And then you get the 2-for-1, and then you're just gonna you're gonna get them later. After they've given up so much.
Yeah,
there's no Dispel right now, is there?
No. Spell Pierce is Dispel. But yeah, in terms of being able to sideboard against an aggressive deck, I think there's kind of the question of how much does that overlap with having some proactive threats in your sideboard versus how much are you trying to be reactive but more efficiently. We can't really take advantage of energy well enough to do stuff like play the 0/4, right?
Oh,
that flashes down
and that draws cards,
right? Like, but Barrel, Chief of Compliance.
Oh, I like him. He's like a decent blocker, and he's actually super synergistic with most of the rest of our deck.
Like, getting to loot so many times is not trivial. You get a great mana savings. This is a deck that really appreciates a tempo advantage. I would consider Barrel Chief of Compliance. That sounds pretty decent to me.
Is there an awesome 4 that we can cast right after the Chief of Compliance?
In Glimmer of Genius, if that's your jam. It's not the same thing, but it is sort of a 4 that you can play after, which is, what do you think of Insidious Will? Is that just too fancy?
Which one is Insidious Will?
It's your choice of either Counterspell or Fork or Deflection.
Yeah, I think that'd be too fancy to plan for against an aggro deck. Like
No, not against an aggro deck. I just meant as an additional form of interaction out of the sideboard. It's probably too fancy, because really what it's about is the boom creatures and the planeswalkers.
Yeah. Is there some
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, is there some kind of awesome permanent that we can play that like there's like Icy Manipulator's probably way too slow for this era, right?
No, I don't think this is a deck where you want Icy, though. I think that Torrential Gearhulk, it makes Icy a bad bet anyway, and I just think that tapping out on turn 5, it's just, and I don't think Icy's, it's possible, but I don't think Icy's necessarily where I'd want to start.
Oh, sure. If they've got like Abrades or whatever Abrade's cousin is, they're coming in for the Gearhulk anyway, right?
Yeah. Is there any chance that that you might want to have a Trophy Mage package?
What would we be getting?
I don't know. Like, if there were a few Trophy Mages, and you wouldn't even need that many. But if you had a couple Trophy Mages, then maybe you could get more mileage out of having like one Aether Sphere Harvester, one Dynavolt Tower or something. Maybe one some kind of card draw engine. Maybe, I don't know.
I see Aether Aethersphere Harvester not getting crewed a lot. I see Dynavolt Tower sitting there with no energy. I think those cards are built for more focused, sideboard game plans than we're going to have. I think we're like a collection of great cards that works well together in a certain direction, and those cards are also that kind of description, but like in very different directions than we're in,
Yeah,
we're not like agnostic enough for those cards.
How about Kefnet the Mindful as a one of?
I thought about that guy, but I think are we gonna have enough cards in hand? I guess that card's unbeatable. Like for aggro,
you want to draw cards. I think. I'm not talking about against aggro. I'm talking about against somebody slower. I don't think you want this against aggro.
Really, you think like having a giant blocker isn't great against aggro? Like just sitting there?
It can't block.
Oh, it can't block?
Michael J.
I guess I don't know.
Okay, so Gale Strike is kind of a poor man's blink of an eye. Is there any chance you'd want a Gale Strike as a fifth blink of an eye?
I don't think
it's a tough way to do it. It's a hard way to do it. You don't want a sideboard Cryptic Serpent out of the sideboard, do you? Against aggro?
No, I want to have fast, highly impactful cards. Like I thought, like Merfolk Trickster.
What about Crabs?
Like
1/5 for 3. Not that good against any of their good cards.
Yeah, like I thought, like Merfolk Trickster is really the profile of an anti-aggro creature I was thinking about playing, right? Like,
is the anti-aggro
initiative can get in there, like I'm still thinking that I'm going to rely a lot on my main deck creatures as being the backbone of my closeout offense against aggro. Like Merfolk Trickster's there just to like give me something to do with my mana, so that I'm not getting blown out in the early turns before I can get my awesome stuff online.
What about Aether Meltdown?
I actually think Aether Meltdown's probably a great idea.
I can see it, Like, just if all you want is some tempo, it actually just fits pretty well with your deck. It doesn't work with the Barrel Chief of Compliance thing that well.
But you know what's great about Aether Meltdown? You play it, and then like later when you Rivers Rebuke, like you just get it back. Like they replay, and you're like, all right, I'll replay too. Like it's kind of awesome.
Okay, I suppose that's something.
What do you think about cards in the treasure map category? Like instead of just going about fighting, no?
I don't like treasure map out of the sideboard in a deck like this. I think that you already have Torrential Gearhulk, and I think that treasure map is a smooth main deck card. I think that it's not as high impact as some of the other options. I'd rather go for a more dedicated hardcore tome if I wanted something in that space.
I mean, that's where Kefnet is.
Like, for instance, I like the Immortal Sun. If you're going to do something, if you're going to do it, why not? You don't even have any Planeswalkers.
Yeah, I was thinking about going cheaper, though. That's the thing. Like, I love, like, I feel like, well, maybe this isn't the most powerful control deck, right? Like, I think the strength of this deck is that it's a ton of permission, and, you can spring offense out of nowhere, but it's, like, if you were really just going to go, stand there and punch somebody, they've got bigger fists than you, other control decks, potentially.
Yeah. You could play the 7-mana control magic with cycling if you wanted to hedge main deck for control magic, and then play the good one after sideboarding for when you mean it.
See, I don't think that you need any cards like that. I mean, I could totally consider playing one in Bolus's Clutches in the main deck in the same way that I would consider playing one Rivers Rebuke in the main deck as just a kind of a catch-all. But I think a deck that has this much permission, which includes, and then also has 4 Blink of an Eye, you just don't really need a card in that category, right? Like especially one so expensive. I think that you're just going to like find what you need with, your card drawing or your Search for Azcanta, and then you're like, oh, there was a problematic permanent. If it doesn't have hexproof, I'm just going to bounce it and attack you. Like that. That's what I'm imagining is going to happen, but maybe.
All right. What about overflowing in Insight? If you're playing against one of these like duress decks, the problem is everybody's going to have negate or Jace's defeat or whatever.
Yeah, I guess this is like really just this This is like the dilemma of the one-color deck, right? Like, our sideboard options are just so much less flexible than everybody else's.
Dude, how about Field of Ruin? One Field of Ruin.
I love it. What about one Arch? I kind of want an Arch. Is the Arch crazy?
No. I don't know what'll be higher impact though out of Field of Ruin versus the Arch. I don't think you'd want to play 2-land, but you might. It would depend on the rest of your sideboard. Oh, we didn't mention it yet, but I think it's probably just sort of a given. I really like a couple of Vizier of Many Faces.
Like 2?
Yeah, 1 or 2. Depends on what the rest of the rest of the field is playing. But I think 1 or 2 field of Vizier of Many Faces against like People's Glory Bringers or their Bristling Hydras or their obviously you can't the Glory Bringer the same way, but like it is still just so good sometimes because you get to do it both ways, and it just gives you a robust form of interaction and some card advantage, and it's just so often good against whatever, against gods. There's a lot to like with the Vizier of Many Faces.
Yeah, it's an outstanding card that's seen play in so many different kinds of decks. Like, it's not a controversial suggestion. What about things like Walking Ballista is probably not high.
Although actually,
right?
It does. Was that Walking Ballista?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense here.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the thing you need. I think that if you were Walking Ballisting, it would be main deck, and I don't think you should.
It doesn't seem right to me. Right? I mean, this isn't a deck that has like a ton of extra mana that it wants to be spending on its own turn.
Incidentally, I wonder. I'm not sure it would be crazy. What do you think of some Curator of Mysteries main deck?
Main deck.
Certainly, like a sideboard Curator of Mysteries.
I mean,
it literally cycles for 1. Sideboarding cards that cycle for 1 is like pretty sketchy.
I mean,
but
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. No, like I think that if I were going to, how often do you want to cast it? That's the first question.
Dude, it's part of the beatdown. Skies.
I don't know. I mean, there was a time when I would have just been like, "This is the best creature ever," but like, I don't think so. I mean, I would rather just find some other one casting cost, one cycling cost cards that were not creatures if I were going to play a card like that.
I kind of like a second Commit to Memory.
I like that card a lot. I think it's it falls very.
I'm saying like a second one on the board. I don't think you want 2 main deck, but you can do 2 main deck if you want. But I think there's just so many good options. I'd rather put the second one on the board. Although I don't know, it's tough. Right, like I think that the Commit to Memory, you really need to be getting every part of the buff flow to make it worth it.
I mean, this is a deck where Commit to Memory is absolutely outstanding, though. Right?
Yeah,
like, it's
definitely no question. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, the things that I would fear with this deck are you're on the wrong side of a beatdown draw where they're like first turn Bowmat Courier, or like have a lot of haste creatures, and then like. You're not dead, but you fall really far behind and you can't catch up. Like that's one thing that I'd be afraid of. And then the other thing I'd be afraid of is just like, you're in a matchup that you should probably win, but you stall on land for a couple of turns. So like they get advantage of something like a Jade Light Ranger or those kind of permanents that they're like not really dangerous for a deck like this. But if the opponent does too many of them, they just have a bunch of extra cards that you're ultimately going to have to interact with.
To me, the 2 big risks are, I think that if you fall behind against the people who play Jade Light Ranger, like just nothing but 2-for-1s.
Yeah.
Like for instance, you tap out to play the Djinn and they just tap out to play the Phoenix. And you're like,
if you get your guy Chupacabra, like that's. I mean, maybe it's your own fault if you get your guy Chupacabra, but
I think all the 2-for-1s. That's one area. I think the 2. I'm not as worried about the fast. I also I think that the other problem besides all the 2-for-1s is actually people who go off over the top. I think that you need to have a diverse mix of plans to try to make their life harder.
So,
what do you think of Karn?
So, I was actually going to ask you the same thing about Karn, but not in this deck. I want to address the comments you made a second ago, though. I think one of the things that's a strength of this deck that you built is that any of those decks that you're talking about that can either go over the top or are just kind of conventional 2-for-1 creature type decks, as long as you're not caught by them, the combination of fast counterspells and unbelievably good creatures means that you can just always race them, right? Like, you can just, like...
Yeah, I'm suggesting that this is the type of deck where I think you're going to have good chances in a lot of scenarios, and I think that you're probably going to win the majority of fights. My concern is that I think it might be one of those, the EV is bad, because I think that you're going to have to win all of the fights. Frequently going to be somebody else can just stick a single Teferi and you're done. It's over. And I think that there's just so many places where a single crack in the armor is going to be it's going to crack in the wall. It's going to be devastating. My concern with the people who go big is that they're going to, even if the game is going on, they're going to have so many live draws that can win the game on its own. And I worry that this deck is really short on ability to ever be losing and turn it around. It's going to start out winning in a way that most blue decks don't. It's just, it needs to hold on to it.
I think that cards like In Bolus's Clutches are going to be real helpful.
Definitely, no question. That's part of the reason I like In Bolus's Clutches. I think In Bolus's Clutches is the exact sort of thing that can be a trump, just go over the top,
Yeah, they went over the top. You went over the top of that. So let's talk about Karn for a second. So Karn is, the Scion of Urza, the new forecasting cost planeswalker, colorless planeswalker from Dominaria. This is really an interesting card. It has +1, reveal the top 2 cards of your library. An opponent chooses one of them, put that card into your hand, and exile the other with a silver counter on it. Then it has -1, put a card you own with a silver counter on it from exile into your hand. So those two abilities just go with each other, right? You can just never do the -1 unless you did the +1. And then it has a -2, so no real ultimate on this card. Create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And I think one of the really the kind of big selling points on Karn is that it's a 4 casting cost planeswalker, but it starts with 5 loyalty. So, you could do the -2 to begin with if you got some artifacts.
Yeah.
I don't think it has a particularly great synergy in this deck unless you're just going to tap out for it in a matchup where you don't think it's going to get attacked. And then
that's I'm talking about using it specifically in a matchup where I don't think it's going to get attacked, and then it's just going to be another form of proactive card advantage.
It's just a tome, right?
It's a tome of a different type, because I think that if we could have an enchantment, we already have a couple Search for Azkantas, and we've got Torrential Gearhulk flashing down. If Karn is providing some planeswalker action, I think, and then Tempest Djinn is a super fast aggressive threat. I think that hitting from just lots of different angles is likely to be the best way that we can try to mix it up against decks that are bigger than us. Because I don't think we can go enough bigger. I think it helps having a couple cards like In Bolus's Clutches, but I don't think we're going to be able to go enough bigger, and that we're going to want to make sure that at least things are awkward for them.
Well, I mean, a deck with this many counterspells, if you just have a free tome that you're using every turn, even if it's just supplying you your land drops, which is, I think, what's going to happen some of the time.
But no. Keep in mind with Karn, you get to get the thing you really want, right? If they're not actually attacking you,
yeah,
whether you plus or minus, you're getting a card each turn. It's not like you have to take a turn off to minus. It's just that you don't have 2 new options. You just have the one you like, and your loyalty is down 1 instead of up 1.
And if it's not getting attacked, that doesn't matter very much, right?
Well, and it's hidden somewhere safe, right? If you have a Karn even if they kill the Karn, if you have another Karn, you can just replay the same card. And remember, when you Karn, each time you Karn, you're opening up the options. Like, I didn't totally appreciate it first until a couple, like Matt Nass and some of the other guys at Direwolf were telling me about how much it's just now they have to play around the fumigate that you could be doing at a drop of a hat, right? Like, you can, like, let's say they have duress, they can't get it. It's just sitting there safe. And let's say that they kill the Karn. Well, you could just play another Karn and get whatever the thing is at any point for the rest of the game. Or let's say that you have the fumigate and the Karn and they can't kill it. Now they have to play around Karn, right? But even if they play around the Karn getting the fumigate, you don't have to use it. Then they have to just play around it next turn.
So Karn is really a card that is really, really beneficial to have multiple copies, right?
Now, the one, definitely. But the one thing I would note as a caveat that I think that Karn is less good with purely reactive cards like counterspells because of how much the advantage I was just describing is best for things that can be played tap-out style. And I worry that this deck might be too counterspell-centric to really benefit from it the same way. That's just the one caveat, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it bears trying out because it's not just counterspells, right? Like, there's a ton of awesome kinds of cards that this deck.
Well, Imboss is clutches.
Yeah, and also bounce cards, and the creatures are outstanding, right? So
yeah, but they don't make things as awkward for the other person.
That's fair.
It's the ones that make it really awkward, you know? Imboss's clutches is a great example of one. Like a Chandra would be, because it could come down and flame tongue something. You know, Ravenous Chupacabra would be. This is a different direction, but what do you think of the your primal, your big hexproof guy?
The big dinosaur?
Yeah, Big Papa.
I was going to ask you the same thing. I don't know. I don't think I'm buying on the big dinosaur.
Nezahal, the Primal Tide, can't be countered.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, as a sideboard card, like, I think that if that card has a place, it's probably not going up against somebody when they know that you already have 8+ outstanding creatures in your main deck, right? So if they've got some,
right, it doesn't have hexproof.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to have some way to make life annoying for you if you have a card that's that expensive. That's all.
Sure,
some kind of Doomfall is going to get it. That's the thing. I mean, I think, like, if we were a creatureless deck in the main deck, then like, oh well, maybe it would still not be good enough. But I think a deck that has, he's going to try to beat me up with this awesome Djinn or this awesome Gear Hulk, then the jig is kind of up on the Elder Dinosaur ahead of time.
Sure. You mentioned 2 decks. Did you have another deck in mind?
Yeah, so I had an idea. I could just throw out the shell that I have so far, and we just iterate around if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So I mentioned before I wanted to play River's Rebuke, but I have a massive level of respect for Lich's Mastery. I know it's a card you mentioned here on the cast multiple times in the past couple of weeks, but I just started brewing with it. This card is unbelievable in practice.
Card seems dope.
Yeah. So I actually found myself, like, playing a bunch of cards that I just don't like, but just to get extra cards in the graveyard. Where the slot's kind of fungible, and you're like, all right, I'll just do this just because I want to get a card in the graveyard because that it's like fake.
I don't know about that, man. If you're talking about Evolving Wilds in a mono, if you're gonna, like, literally just be playing mono swamps for a mana base, I don't think Evolving Wilds cuts it. Because think of it this way: that gives you 1 extra life if you have a Lich's Mastery, and if it came to that. So, there's no way that you want to go that low.
So the deck I wanted to present is a black-white deck, which does, in fact, have 4 Evolving Wilds.
I like it in black-white.
So, but I also had 2 renegade maps. So that's what I was going to get. I probably in the abstract would not play renegade map.
It depends. It depends on what you're doing with your renegade map.
I'm getting basic.
Well, see, there is another part of the equation though with renegade map. Okay, so let's suppose that you're playing an Aether Flux Reservoir style Lich's Mastery deck.
Yep.
Like if you play now, let's suppose that you have for instance, Foundry Inspector or something, right? If you have a Foundry Inspector, suddenly, and you can double up too. If you're willing to play bad Foundry Inspector, you can also play the 4-cost version from Dominaria. It's got some advantages, but costing 4 is pretty brutal. But Yoira's Familiar, the 4-cost 2/2 flyer historic spells, which includes artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. Historic spells cost 1 less. So if you have either a Familiar or a Foundry Inspector, all of your 1-cost artifacts are a 0. And so you can actually just Yawgmoth's bargain, right? Like if you have a Lich's Mastery, and then you drop a 1-cost artifact when you have Aetherflux Reservoir, you'll draw a card. And then if you have another artifact, you'll draw 2 cards. And if you have another artifact, you'll draw 3 cards. And you can just draw your whole deck.
Yeah, the calculus on that is just to make sure that you have 50 assets, right? Like you need to get 50 something, right? Like you're not probably going to have 50 permanents in play other than the Lich's Mastery. So you're going to have enough cards in hand, cards in graveyard, etc., in order to avoid blowing up your Lich's Mastery if you tried to win with the Aetherflux Reservoir. Yeah,
but that's trivial. You just draw your whole deck. Like once you draw 4, then you're going to draw 5, then you're going to draw 6, and you have these cards that cost 0. It'll be really easy. You just draw your whole deck.
Oh, that might be a good time to use the Nimble Obstructionist.
The Nimble Obstructionist? Why?
Well, to counter the pay 50 life ability, right?
Oh, somebody else paying. Yeah. Somebody else with the Obstructionist. That would be really good. My hope would be that if I drew my whole deck, I could look at their hand first. But I think that if you're going to draw your whole deck, it's actually not too hard because you don't even have to time it right? Like Lich's Mastery keeps you from dying from decking.
Yep.
So you can actually just draw everything. The Lich's Mastery needs to stay in play, and you don't get to count the Aetherflux Reservoir. Actually, you could. No, it won't be in play. Yeah, you could.
I mean,
I think it's easy.
The zoning on your cards doesn't matter either because you can discard them, not like remove them from game, just discard them, and then they become assets for the 50 anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's no problem.
All right, so let me just throw out the idea that I had, but obviously this is nowhere near a finished product. It's just, I don't even know if I have to throw out the exact list. It's a black-white Lich's Mastery deck, but like pure control, right? So Renewed Faith.
I don't know what you mean by pure control.
Oh, like really, like not like any creatures.
Okay. But no, you're not speaking to how combo-y it is or how traditional it is. You're just speaking to not being creature-based.
Yeah. So
and it's not an all-in combo.
No. So you could theoretically win a bunch of different ways. I just throw out the sketch that I have. There's 2 Renegade maps, 2 Authority of the Councils in the main deck, 4 Renewed Faiths, 4 Cast Out, 3 Fumigates, 2 Approach of the Second Sun, 2 Profane Procession, 3 Fatal Pushes, 4 Moment of Craving, 2 Mastermind's Acquisition, 4 Vraska's Contempt, 3 Lich's Mastery, and then the land bases, 4 Concealed Courtyard, 4 Evolving Wilds, 2 Field of Ruin, 4 Isolated Chapel, 5 Plain, 6 Swamp. And then the sideboard cards that I had sketched out are 1 Approach in the sideboard, 2 more Authority of the Councils.
Why do you have 1 more Approach in the sideboard?
In case you get like Lost Legacy or something. Always leave it there.
Come on, man. I don't think that's worth a sideboard slot.
Okay.
Just go get some other threat.
That's probably fair, right? So, 2.
But you can get 1 out of your deck. Like, go get an Approach out of your deck, and if they actually lost Legacy, you can go get anything else.
Okay. No, I mean, it was literally just in case I got Lost Legacy. So, the other 2 Authority of the Councils, the 4th Fumigate in the sideboard, I don't know if that's even better. Is it better to have it in the main? I don't have enough experience with specifically.
I think just play something else.
1 Arguel's Bloodfast, 4 Gifted Aetherborn, 1 Lost Legacy, 3 Gontis, a Torment of Hailfire, and a Tetsamok. So I have some creatures in the sideboard.
I only like Torment of Hailfire if you're playing a bunch of the Cabal, like the land.
Yep.
If you have a whole bunch, like if you're playing a mono black deck with Cabal Strongholds, I don't think you want I don't think you want Torrent of Hailfire in a 2-color deck.
Yeah, I made a mono black version that I didn't really want to discuss this time around that had not only the Cabal Strongholds but also Gilded Lotus that has Torments of Hailfire in the sideboard. The reason I thought Torments of Hailfire might be good is some of the games go very, very long, and it was for the Lich's Mastery mirror match. Right, it's just an option to destroy their Lich's Mastery.
I guess. If it even comes to that. Maybe. I would bet that them having a Lich's Mastery and then it just going, it's not that likely that this card is just for sure going to win. But
yeah.
Maybe. I would want to do it if you have the Cabal, only if you have the land.
Yeah, I mean, we're like so immature in terms of testing out the new decks at this point. But this is just one of the sketch ideas. But I like it a lot on paper. If that makes any sense. I think I can just imagine a lot of situations where I'm just removing their threats, and then like turn 6, I just drop the Lich's Mastery, and they don't have anything in play, and pretty much that's it.
Well, here's a couple thoughts for things that could build on this. First of all, bridge, Battle at the Bridge. Oh. See, Battle at the Bridge is something at the very least, I really like it in the versions, like the Aetherflux Reservoir versions that play lots of 1-cost artifacts in the Foundry Inspector. When you just start chaining and you're just putting out all these 1-cost artifacts, being able to keep going with a bridge where you only have to spend 1 additional mana, that's pretty interesting to me.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome I'm definitely gonna try that one out. I have a different version that has like Treasure Map, Azor's Gateway, and Gilded Lotus.
Oh yeah, I think Treasure Map that's the next thing I wanted to add is that I think Treasure Map is super good. I think Treasure Map being able to help fuel the Lich's Mastery. I think that Treasure Map being able to fuel Battle at the Bridge, and I think that Treasure Map getting all of those artifacts, all of that stuff ends up really mattering. You can use those, like that, and you really need to fuel. Like you want a lot of mana for the big turn. Yeah. And even though Treasure Map is still costs you a mana when you're going off with your Foundry Inspector or whatever, that's fine. It's not that much. I mean. Here's another card. I don't know if this is actually good or not, but Navigator's Compass. Navigator's Compass, first of all, it sounds a little funny, but I think that Lich's Mastery, it's possible that it could be actually kind of nice to have a little bit of this if you care about the artifacts enough for the engine. Being able to support triple black for Lich's Mastery, double white for Fumigate, and still be able to play stuff like Inventor's Fair. And obviously, Inventor's Fair is pretty dope with a lot of the stuff we're talking about.
Oh, sure. I mean, just passively there, if you had the minimum number of artifacts in play, it's actually awesome with Lich's Mastery, right? It's just Howling Mine. Right. And I could imagine that the toolbox is worth something, I mean, I think that the toolbox is definitely worth something, but separately, Howling Mine is insane.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Another possibility is Orazka Relic. It costs 3. This is back, obviously, from Rivals, but it's a 3-cost artifact that taps for a colorless, and you can tap it and sacrifice it to gain 3 life and draw a card, and use that ability only if you have the City's Blessing. The thing I like about this is that being able to get Lich's Mastery down ahead of schedule is very attractive. Lich's Mastery is potentially could be uncommonly good at actually getting the City's Blessing. And being able to gain 3 life has extra value with Lich's Mastery. And you're actually drawing 4 cards because of the draw card. But because you got this draw card in there, it actually gives you a way to get a little bit of flow in the backup plan. Like if things are not going well, if you flood it out. So I think a Raska Relic could actually be kind of interesting.
I think that like one of the hallmarks that at least some of the Lich's Mastery decks are going to have, like obviously if you're like the Aetherflux Reservoir version, like that's probably going to be very all-in-ish. But like there's going to be a whole class of Lich's Mastery decks in all different kind of colors, I think, that are just good decks and that they're just going to be able to win whether or not they have Lich's Mastery. And that like Lich's Mastery is either like the nail in the coffin or just this kind of, all right, we're playing a bonus sub-game now or something. But like, you know, you just what you're talking about, right? Like cards like Battle at the Bridge or Karn or, you know, any of those things, like those are just good control cards. And you can put your opponent in a corner with them and build advantages like you always have. And if you don't have to expose yourself with the Lich's Mastery, you don't have to.
Yeah. Other one-cost artifacts to consider? Traveler's Amulet and Renegade Map. You know, helping lower the opportunity cost a little of having so many artifacts. I don't know if you would really, like, it would depend on the rest of your deck, but another option, Silent Gravestone is not out of the question. You know, like, it could be a little slow, but depending on what the rest of the metagame ends up looking like. The thing I don't like about the Silent Gravestone is that if you exile too many cards from your own graveyard, you don't have to not want to be killing with the Aetherflux Reservoir. Let's put it that way.
So, in your mind, like, I'm sure you've just like, you know, walking down the street or something, thought about Lich's Mastery, probably even more than I have. Are you really leaning towards the combo-y version, not control?
No. I'm just interested in understanding it because I think it is more probable that the better way to play Lich's Mastery is mostly fair with backdoors to certain combos. You know, like there's some really interesting demonic tutors, and there's some situational cards that I wouldn't be surprised if having, you know, like, you know, one of those plan A is fair, but you've got combo potential. Mm-hmm. But like, I think that understanding, like, I don't know that you can't make the most broken version, and I'd want to start making the most broken version, partially because it could be the most broken, but second, because I would want to know what the rest of the field is starting to look a little bit more like before shaping up this Orzhov mid-range board control deck, you know?
Yeah, I think like there's so many different ways you can go with the card. I actually just went the black-white version to start with because I thought that Renewed Faith and Fumigate were the most exciting cards in combination with Lich's Mastery. But I think you could play like a green-black ramp deck with like Gift and Gaia's Blessing, and your way to win is just like Gaia's Blessing and Hour of Promise. And like that's probably a legitimate way to play Lich's Mastery. In fact, it's a way to get tons
This sounds
of
so weird. It is. That's fine. To me, I feel like once your Lich's Mastering, it does Gaia's Blessing's job already.
So you want to? So here's the thing.
I want to, whatever I do, even if I'm playing just a board control deck, I don't want to have to jump through hoops, right? Like I'm saying, like, okay, for instance, imagine if you're playing like you've got a bunch of interaction that effectively each draws 2 cards if you have Lich's Mastery. You know, you got Moment of Craving, Vraska's Contempt, whatever. You've got all that stuff, right? And then you just have control. You're sitting there, you're drawing through your deck, and then you eventually just annihilate your opponent with a single copy of one of your demonic tutors can go to your sideboard and get something that will kill them from anywhere, right? Like maybe your deck's mono black and you've got plenty of those lands and you eventually kill them with the Hailfire. Or maybe you don't need to. Maybe, you know, because I don't think you should have to be all in on that. I just think that you should be playing ways to win that are highly synergistic with your strategy and also are super good even on the backup plan. I don't know.
One card I didn't mention but I thought about maybe would be good is Access Immortality also. I think that card is pretty cute with Argiel's Bloodfast. Sure.
That's kind of interesting. It's pretty cute with Lich's Mastery for sure.
Yeah.
I like the Bloodfast anyway. You see, my preferred version of Lich's Mastery at the moment, I think that I think there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good about Orzhov. But the version I like in my head is a mono black version, and I would want to use Argol's Bloodfast also. I think Argol's Bloodfast is like another way to take advantage of all these life gain cards that we're going to want to play anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I have my mono black version has a bunch of creatures in it. It has like Gifted Aetherborn and stuff like that.
You don't like Dreadshade though?
In
black 3/3 Well, I'm just saying like Dreadshade enough to want to play mono black instead of black white.
Well, I think it depends. I think mono black could be good also. It just black white was the one that I wanted to talk about first because I just thought it had the most natural synergies. Like even Authority of the Councils, right? Like if you have Authority of the Councils and then you play Fury, and then you play Lich's Mastery, like they can't even get back in the game. Like they play something and you draw a card and they don't attack you. Like it's like thank God I will be playing the mono blue deck because I could go deep into the wrong rabbit hole.
Yeah, I believe it.
I could. So anyway, that was my thought. It's black white deck.
Seems like it could be sweet. I don't know. There's a lot of different avenues to try with it. I'm excited. I think Lich's Mastery is the place I want to start.
And, that Battle of the Bridge is just an awesome idea. I'm just going to start brewing up some more lists with more artifacts because of that.
Azur's Gateway.
I love Azur's Gateway. I mean, would you play Cut to Ribbons just for Azur's Gateway?
No, you ask me that every week.
I was wondering if the answer will ever change.
I will sometimes play it, but I think that it's... I don't know, man. Why... Like... Cut to Ribbons only for the black side is like just so much worse than Torrent of Hailfire or of Hail or whatever.
Yeah, I mean if you're gonna tutor for it.
So like I don't know. I just think that it might be worth playing Cut to Ribbons in some versions, but at the moment I kind of want to just play mono black, dude. Mono black, Necro baby. You know, you were there. You know.
I know.
You know. Dude, it's been too long. The kids today, they don't know about Necro.
We will teach them.
Yeah, will we? It sure sounded like you were going to be the person playing a bunch of 20 counter spells and some flying creatures.
Yep. When I say we, I mean people of our generation.
Okay.
Like Brian Kibler is coming back, right? Surely he will play... War elves.
Oh, okay, sure. I was gonna say, it's hard for me to wrap my head around Brian Kibler, the tipping point for him being Lich's Mastery. I think him coming back. I think he's for sure going to come back. He's not even really gone. Brian Kibler is with us always, but I just mean that he's going to land a War Elf, and you can be damn sure of that. I'm talking Lich's Mastery, mono black or black white, maybe. Let me couch it a little. All right. Dope, dude. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, use a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends